Hello again, Mutie lovers. You are watching Uncanny, the mutant musings of Matt and Siz. It's the show where we are discussing Marvel's Uncanny X-Men comic issue by issue from 1975's Giant Size X-Men #1 all the way to the present day. My name is Matt. I write and draw Steamroller Man, a superhero comedy comic that you can read for free online at steamrollerman.com. And this is my co-host, Siz, publisher, promoter, and founder of Comex Studios Australia. You can find all things Comex at comex.net.au. That's comx.net.au. Siz, how are you?
I'm excellent. Excellent. I really enjoyed this issue, so I had a lot of fun. So it made my week.
Oh, good. Awesome.
Yes.
And how was your week other than reading X-Men?
Well, to be honest, it was all work, so it didn't take much to make my week. So no, not to say anything bad about the comic, but just to say, yeah, it didn't take much. So yeah.
Very good. I was quite busy with work myself, and I actually had to drink a cup of coffee right before we started recording today because I actually fell asleep watching TV on the couch, and it's only like 3:00 in the afternoon. So, but I'm raring to go.
Yeah. Well, I've made a coffee, but it's 10 in the morning. I was up until midnight, so I'm feeling quite tired as well. Wow. So let's hope both of us don't fall asleep today.
Well, let's get into the discussion before either of us fall asleep then.
Yeah,
so this week we read it's not Uncanny X-Men yet.
Not just
it's
yet.
It's actually all new, all different X-Men, issue number 94, and this is the issue that picks up straight after last week's issue that we read, which is Giant Size X-Men. So this is the first issue where it's the new team. And Siz, you've got info about the creative team.
Yes, I do. This is the first one where Chris Claremont writes. Unlike I thought was the Giant Size, I thought that was the first one he wrote. But yeah, it's this issue, 94. And but Len Wein, is it pronounced Wein?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Len Wein.
Len Wein. He's the plotter and editor for this issue, so maybe to keep it sort of on track, so they don't go too far off the last issue. Still, Dave Cockrum is the artist. There's a different inker, Bob McLeod, I think that's pronounced.
Yep, Bob McLeod. Yep.
Phil Rachelson is the colorist, and Tom. I don't know if I want to really try to pronounce that one, but he's the letterer. So Tom
Orzechowski. Yeah, Tom Orzechowski.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm glad you know how to pronounce it because I don't have a clue.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Tom Orzechowski's lettering.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's the letterer. So I guess he letters for quite a while. I saw his name in later issues when I was skipping ahead.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, just a warning to everyone. I have a horrible time pronouncing words, so this is going to happen a lot. Just saying, putting it out there. It's going to happen a lot. Probably the only other thing, the technical stuff, is this has 2 chapters in it. It starts with the Doomsmith scenario, and then it's Death Oa. They've taken the V out, so I don't know how to pronounce over without a V. Valhalla High. So that's your 2 chapters in an 18-page story. I found that amusing. And the other thing I found out when I read this was it was bi-monthly. Every second month they were printing this. So
I find that really, really interesting. Again, like even just in the space of one episode of this show, I've learned a lot about, like, I had all these kind of misconceptions about the comic that I just sort of assumed, Chris Claremont was writing from the Giant Size X-Men special issue, and that it was monthly. So it's very interesting that it was only bi-monthly at this stage, and I think maybe that is a result of, because I've always heard that the sales on X-Men were quite poor before they revamped the title and brought the new characters in to make the team that we all know as like the Uncanny X-Men today.
Yeah.
And usually, like what Marvel would do if there was a title that wasn't selling well, they would go back to like a bi-monthly schedule just to sort of save printing costs. Also, they're not paying artists for 12 issues a year. They're paying, the creators, they're only paying them for 6 issues a year. So the whole thing would be a cheaper proposition. So that's interesting. I wasn't aware that it was only bi-monthly at this stage. It's interesting that you mentioned Tom Orzechowski as the letterer, because when I started, as I think talked about last show, when I started reading, it was in the it was the early 200 issue numbers. And Tom Orzechowski was firmly entrenched by that point as the letterer, I guess. But he lettered with a very different style than what we see here. And so I'm kind of wondering, Tom Orzechowski, it's a sort of more squarish font style that he would use, and a very clean looking lettering, whereas his lettering on this issue, not as clean, not as tight. I mean, I would basically say it's not as neatly lettered as he eventually came to be known for. And so it was really interesting to me to see that he actually was the letterer on this issue, because his style, very different. And I wonder whether this was sort of more towards the beginning of his career, in the same way that it was, early in Chris Claremont's career as well. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
No, that makes sense. He's like improved over time, just by doing and doing and doing. Just for all the crazy out there, that's how you learn.
Yep.
Doing and doing and doing and doing and doing.
Practice
it's not magic
makes perfect.
To the people who aren't. Yeah, I was going to say, to the people who aren't artists, it's not magic. It's just practice.
No, that's true. I always say that it's not a magic trick. It's a skill that you can improve with just constant practice.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I suck, because I don't constantly practice.
Well, it's a matter of, like I always think it's interesting because everybody draws when they're kids.
Yeah.
Right? And everybody's kind of at the same skill level when they're kids. And I think it's the kids who are encouraged at a young age, who keep drawing and they enjoy it. And so they want to sort of spend more time drawing, and kids who aren't encouraged when they're young kind of find other things that they're good at, So yeah, it's totally true. But anyway, back to talking about this issue. One thing I thought that the on page 1, it's really clever layout, where it's actually the reflection in the mirror of Professor X looking in a mirror, and the X-Men are all behind him. And because you can see in the lower right corner, that sort of shape, that's the back of Professor X's head. And so I thought that's a really clever way of showing all their faces at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
Really clever layout, shows the whole team. So yeah, I just wanted to make note of that one.
No, that was really cool.
This leads into like the first plot point of this issue, which is a bunch of the X-Men decide they're leaving.
Yes. Let's see if we can get that page where you're shocked.
At the end of last issue, the little caption box said, like, what are we going to do with 13 X-Men? And then we get the answer very quickly in this next story. It's like, well, there's not going to be 13 of them, because 5 or so of them have decided they're off.
They're off. Yep. And what I love about this is Cyclops' reasoning to be the one that stays out of the originals. Even though he's in love with Jean and wants to be with Jean, he's like, nah, staying here. That's it.
Yeah.
can't hide my powers. I guess back in these days, he didn't have the ruby sunglasses. Um, so, but I thought that was like, that's really weird. I
It
love you, but
was.
see ya.
There's a few instances in this issue where, again, like I think I remarked on it when we were talking on in the last show,
Yep.
about characters making decisions that are seemingly completely illogical, completely against character, not what any sort of normal person would do, but they
Yeah.
make the decision because the story requires that they have to go in this certain direction.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that Cyclops thing is definitely one thing that I noticed as well. You're absolutely right. And we see also on page 6, Cyclops is talking to himself again in an empty room, talking out loud to himself, same as he was last issue.
Oh, this is the one. This is that's the part that really got me. It's not unrequited.
Unrequited.
Unrequited. That's it. Love. She's
Yeah.
like, I love you too. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah. I love you too. See ya.
See ya.
The other thing that I thought was curious is when the X-Men tell Professor X, like, oh, we're leaving, they sort of give him a speech about, like, look, we're grateful to you because you took us in as kids, but we've grown up now, we're adults. But then the new X-Men, they're all adults. So it's like, well, you don't have to leave, obviously, because Wolverine is an adult and Banshee is clearly like in his 30s.
Yeah, well, he even says that he's got grey hair.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, well, it doesn't preclude, reaching adulthood doesn't mean, oh, you're out. So, that was another thing where I was like, well, okay. They just wanted to get rid of those characters, I guess.
And they've all decided together, but Cyclops didn't know about
it. Yeah. And this issue is the first time, because as you said, like, first issue, Claremont's come on, and even though he's just scripting, he's clearly responsible for the tone of the dialogue and also the caption boxes as well. And you can really, it's the first time we really hear that kind of Claremont voice that sort of eventually typified the X-Men style and tone of story is in those caption boxes. And this is the first time we see that, especially, I think on page 6 is the first time he's sort of like using caption boxes to sort of set the mood and talk about what's going through Cyclops's mind.
Well, he yells most of it. So
yes, he does. Yells it to the empty room.
To the empty room. And apparently no one hears him, so it must be a big mansion.
Yep. Exactly. It's a big place.
It's a big place. And he picked the
you can yell your heart out and you won't disturb anybody.
I'm trying to remember what happened. Then it goes into the training. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
straight to the danger room.
Danger
Come on, guys,
room, exactly.
Straight to the danger room.
Exactly. Now, I had to look up on the Marvel Unlimited app because I was like, oh, is this the first appearance of the Danger Room? But it's not at all. Like, the Danger Room appeared in X-Men #1 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's not called the Danger Room, but they are clearly in a room with all these crazy machines that they have to, duck underneath and jump over and, and doing, like, there's a whole training sequence in X-Men #1.
Wow.
And so this is not the first appearance of the Danger Room. And I wondered whether that is the reason why this Danger Room sequence is kept very short. They do this scene where Thunderbird is like, I can, triumph over any training device you've got. And he goes into the room, but they they frame it from outside the door, and you just see him go in the door, and then next panel he's flying out the door. So they don't even see, it's all just suggested, which I thought was an interesting way to frame it. And that's what made me look up whether the Danger Room hadn't been really created yet, and it was just more an idea at this stage. But I think it was just more an interesting storytelling technique of like, we don't need to see what's in the room to have that joke play. And then they have a really nice full-page spread of just the training with Cyclops' head is huge in the middle of the page. Yeah, there we go. That's the page, which I think is a really nice layout. And it kind of tells the story in one image, which is, that's a clever and sort of masterful way to tell a story in one image. And we also see more conflict between, one thing I wanted to bring up was more conflict between Thunderbird and Cyclops.
Yeah.
And Thunderbird is kind of acting like an asshole to everybody around him. Like the X-Men would be called a toxic workplace today. And, it's like he's so horrible to every member of the team. Like he's not friendly to anyone. And then it made me wonder, like, if he's having such a bad time, why does he, like, nobody's making him stay.
Yeah, no,
he's
that's
not
what I love
getting
about
paid
this.
To be there.
That's the part that amused me the most about this. They're all having a hard time. They're all being pushed to their limits. And it's like, what is driving them? They were just picked up from their homes and said, hey, you want to be part of the X-Men? Oh, okay, what the hell?
Right.
And it's like, we're going to train you. Rah! And it's like, why are you doing this? Yes. Is Xavier like planting thoughts in your head to like, yeah, you want to do this. Yeah, you want to do this. But the thing I remember is, I've forgotten his name. Thunderbird. I was going to say, I think I've got it stuck in my head that he's not Thunderbird because that's a toy I used to have. But yeah,
he's not nothing to do with the British Thunderbirds.
Yeah. The Thunderbirds. Thunderbird. Sorry. Oh God, Thunderbird.
Sorry,
I'm having a good time here, aren't I? He even says, "Way to go, hotshot! Looks like you've blown another chance," because he's getting angry at everyone. And he's like, so he even knows he's been an asshole,
right?
So, I don't understand. Maybe it's to make us dislike him a little bit because of what happens in the next issue. But yeah. Which that issue, I can't wait to talk about that one because I've read that already as well, and I was just like, what the hell?
Right.
There's I'll stop. This
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
We're talking about this issue.
Yes.
Now, my favorite part about after this
Yep.
was, as you can see in this scene, they're being called to the ready room by Xavier with his psychic face. Yep. And this is where we find out about Count Nefaria. I'm guessing that's how it's said. Which apparently was a villain from an old X-Men comic. We didn't go that far back, so we don't know. I think they even do that thing where they do the little star and then tell you what issue it was. Maybe not. That's something I miss about comics. The little star that told you where it happened. So you go back to that issue and go, oh, that's what happened.
Yes.
I do miss that in comics. But I know people who hated that with a passion. I'm like, what?
Really?
It was awesome. Yeah. I've read like threads about it. How much they hated narrator boxes and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, why? It told you so much.
Yeah, to me, that's part of the charm of that era of comics. Yeah. That's just part of the whole milieu of those Silver Age and Bronze Age superhero comics was those little editor info box kind of captions.
Yeah, editor, that's all right.
But yeah, this the plot starts on page. The plot of the issue, to me, actually starts on page 10, which is the NORAD Valhalla base, which is under this mountain in the Colorado Rockies, gets invaded by Count Nefaria and his Annie-men,
Animen, yes. Let's see if we
And
can find.
I had to
There they
look
are.
up the
Okay.
Animen because I'd never heard of them before. They first appeared in Daredevil number 10 in
Oh.
1965. Yeah,
Oh.
and they were originally just a bunch of guys, like they were a bunch of thugs who just wore animal costumes, but they were just normal guys.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like they've sort of been powered up by Count Nefaria in some, the space between issues. Like we don't see it, he
Yeah.
talks about it like, oh, I've used my magia science.
Yeah.
Also, like on page 10, this army official gets a box sent to him with a
I love
button that
this.
says press me, and you would think like NORAD, which is like the center of America's like defense network that controls all the nuclear missiles, would have slightly tighter security than someone being able to send a box with a button that says press me. And you would think like the army officials would be trained to, hey, if you do happen to get a box with a button that says press me, don't press it.
Yeah, don't
Let's
press
just
it.
analyze it first. It could be some sort of trap, which it actually does end up being. It opens some kind of dimensional portal, which lets the Animen into the base.
Yep.
And then on page 12, Count Nefaria is revealed as being behind the whole thing. Now, I'd never heard of Count Nefaria either.
Yeah, me neither.
So I had to look him up on the Marvel wiki. Now, Count Nefaria is an Italian nobleman with connections to the Magia, which is the Marvel Universe version of the Mafia. Do you know about like the origins of like why they called it the Magia instead of the Mafia?
No.
So apparently when they first wanted to do stories involving essentially the Mafia, they were actually scared because, the creators and Marvel Comics offices were based in New York, where there was a Mafia presence. And they were scared that, oh, you don't want to like it was actually a thing, like do not mention the Mafia. So they changed it because they were scared that the Mafia would actually take notice and, I don't know, do something to Marvel or the creators. So that's why they changed it to the Magia. And
that's so different.
Right. Right, exactly. It's almost like, oh, they didn't want to get sued by the Mafia for copyright infringement or something. It's like, let's call it the Magia. No one will know what we're actually referring to. An interesting tidbit about Count Nefaria was that on the Marvel Wiki, it says Nefaria had his ancestral castle in Italy disassembled stone by stone and reassembled atop the New Jersey Palisades. So the New Jersey Palisades are like a series of cliffs overlooking the Hudson River. And I have a couple of friends who are from New Jersey. And so I asked them yesterday, like, so if you had a castle in the Italian Alps, would you disassemble it and move it to the New Jersey Palisades, or would you prefer to stay in Italy? And they were like, I think I'd stay in Italy. So I guess it's just a grass is greener scenario where, Count Nefaria was like, America sounds nice.
Well, this tells us straight away that the Count has a hell of a lot of money, because that would not be a cheap exercise.
Right. Exactly. And he also uses, he refers on page 13 to, he used, quote, magia science to alter these Animen, making them less than human and far, far more. So that just made me think, can you imagine if the Mafia had a science division?
Yeah.
Because clearly the Magia has a whole science division where there's bioengineering and also, like, so wow. if only the Mafia could use their powers for good. I think if they
I
devoted
like that.
themselves to science.
I didn't even know what Magia meant. I was like, Magia science, yeah, one of those comic things. He's talking about
Right.
something I don't know about. Now that I
Yeah,
know
no,
that's like
it's
their version of the Mafia, that cracks me up.
yeah, that's the
Mafia
Marvel
science
version of the Mafia.
turned you into weird creatures with some really cool earpods. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So clearly, you know, Nefaria has used the Magia science to kind of beef these Animen up, and I guess they're now like they're sort of half animal, half human beings, and then there's they got special powers because the one called the female Animen uh, called Dragonfly has like hypnotic powers or something later in the issue.
oh, is that what it was? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and then the guy, the ape one, he's got super strength.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've all got powers now, I guess.
The frog one
Um,
can jump really high.
yep, animal-based powers.
Oh God, I love him. Well, it's a funny because I didn't take much notice of the cover, which says who the
Mm-hmm.
villain is. When I got to
Right,
that part where they're coming out of the porthole, I went, "Oh, this must be the High Evolutionary," and
right,
I was way off. This was Mafia science, not High Evolutionary
right.
science.
Well, I know the High Evolutionary. It's a similar thing. Like he also was doing
Mm,
experiments with animals and humans and
exactly.
kind of cross pollinating the species and all that sort of thing. So I don't think it's necessarily a new idea, or maybe it's these
Mm.
both these ideas were sort of happening around the same time. I'm not sure of the
Well,
timing
they
of it.
had to come up with ways to make villains. They were running out of stuff. That's why the X-Men exist. They were running out of stuff, and they're like,
Right.
mutants. Yeah, that'll do.
Right. Well, and they had to do it on a monthly basis, so
Yeah.
had to come up with like new ideas every month. That's tough.
Yeah.
So on page 15, Count Nefaria reveals his plan, and it's actually identical to Dr. Evil's plan in the first Austin Powers movie, which is I'm going to control the world's, I'm going to control America's like nuclear arsenal for ransom. Like, unless you pay me $1 million. He doesn't say $1 million, but it's basically the same plan as Dr. Evil. So Marvel
Actually,
beat Mike Myers to it in
yep.
this case.
This is where Mike probably stole it from. But what I love is um, each nation's ability to pay. So he's being nice about it. Like, oh, you
He
can only
is.
afford that much? Oh, well, I'll just take that much off you.
He is. He's a very reasonable supervillain.
Very reasonable. So I
Yeah.
thought that was nice of him. So
That's absolutely true. And one thing I have to mention on this page, this is the ugliest version of Beast that I've
oh,
ever seen in a comic.
you beat me to it.
Sorry, I'm talking too much.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's like the worst Beast. He's I can't even pinpoint what it is about it that I don't like about it. I think it's the unnecessary drawing of each individual hair type of thing they've got going on.
Yeah.
Just makes him look weird.
Looked very strange to me. I turned to this page and I was like, oh, was this like, did they not have? So I'm wondering whether the character design was not really firmly established at this point in Marvel Comics history. And so different artists were sort of trying to sort of feel their way around drawing the character.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I kind of wonder about the creation timeline, like what the deadlines were for this issue. Because the artwork does seem to me to be more rushed in this issue than it was in the giant size special
That makes sense.
that came
Actually,
out just before. but it was the same artist. Dave Cockrum was the penciler on both. Bob McLeod inks him here. And so perhaps it's the fact that, like, it could be that Cockrum just did rougher pencils and he let Bob McLeod sort of do the finishes. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But I know Dave Cockrum inked his own work on the special. And he's only done he's only credited as doing the pencils here. And, I've seen Bob McLeod do good work, better work than this other places. It does seem like his inking is a bit rushed on this issue, and I don't think, at least in this case, it's a good match for Dave Cockrum's pencils, but that's just my personal opinion.
I can't spot stuff like that, so I'm not going to say anything. I just either like the art or don't like the art. I can't analyze it, so yeah. But I'm not really an artist, so that's probably why. My favorite part of this is where they go in, and they're like, "Sorry, the Avengers couldn't make it. We're here." Oh, okay. Well, in that case, get in there. But you've only got how long do they say he's got? 6 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, 52 minutes. 52 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. Like the Army general, Cyclops is on the radio to the Army general, and the Army general thinks the Avengers have shown up. And then Cyclops is like, "Oh, no, it's the X-Men." And it's like such a okay, that's fine, I guess. X-Men will have to do. I thought that was hilarious.
And it gives them the full rundown of what they need to do and go, get in there, even though you're hated and feared, we're going to get you to help us.
Right, exactly.
Maybe they're not hated and feared yet. Maybe this doesn't go well. Maybe that's why they're hated and feared.
This is the reason everybody ends up hating them. They failed this mission. The other thing I thought was funny was Thunderbird, despite being injured, because when they get the mission brief and they say like, "Oh, we've got to get in the jet, go off to Colorado," Thunderbird demands to go, even though he's injured and generally hates most of his teammates. He's like, "No, I'm coming with you." It's like, dude, you hate everybody. Why not just stay behind? Like, it's so weird. It's so baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of... I'm loving these old comics because they're great to read and they give you a good laugh, even though they're not meant to.
Yeah. Yes.
But I love that where the general's just like, "Oh, yeah, get in there. Avengers couldn't make it. Away you go."
Yep.
That's
all right. I guess you'll have to do.
Yeah.
So on this page, go ahead.
I was just going to say this is where he shoots. He goes, our sensors are detecting that it's the X-Men. So the guys down on the ground couldn't detect it was the X-Men, but this guy can for some reason.
Right.
He thought it was the Avengers. Oh, look at that Blackbird. Must be the Avengers. Don't they go in Quinjets? I don't know. And yeah, he fires missiles at him. It's like, yeah, it's the X-Men. Ooh, this is awesome. I can kill them finally.
Right.
And it's the same thing he says on the cover almost. Instead, they find only death.
Yes.
Ooh. So yeah, I love that.
This is where the plot actually comes into focus, I think, on this page. Is that page 17?
It doesn't tell me. I'm loving how you know the page numbers.
Oh, in the app, if you just tap on the middle of the page, it'll come up.
Oh, that's good. No, this is 16. Oh, hang on. Okay. No. I went backwards. Yeah, we were on 17.
Yeah. So they mentioned that it's the Doomsmith system, which will automatically launch the entire US missile arsenal at its enemies in 52 minutes time. So the X-Men have 52 minutes. I don't know. That was such a peculiar
it is, isn't
number.
It?
It's like, well, why does that have any significance? Like 52 minutes, that seems very arbitrary. And I went back and tried to like read through the whole issue again, trying to work out like, is there some significance to 52 minutes? Still couldn't find any kind of thing, but I don't know. Did you find anything?
I didn't find anything, but I was just thinking maybe it's an hour that it counts down, and they've already been fighting him for 8 minutes. So they go, you got 52. I don't know. Just grasping at
makes
straws
sense.
here.
So the band name for this issue has to be Doomsmith.
I'm looking forward to this. A band name each issue. I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and find one every issue. So this issue's band name has to be Doomsmith, and their first album is "Too Rich a Jest," which is a quote from page 17 as well. I can't remember which panel, but that was the one I wrote down.
Oh yes, I see that one actually. Yeah, by heaven, this is too rich a jest.
Yeah.
So the missiles, they dodge them, but one of them gets them, and then they have a little escape craft, which reminds me a lot of. Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, which reminds me a lot of Mask. So maybe the Mask toys took this idea from the 1975 X-Men issue 94, and said, that's a brilliant idea. Let's make toys out of this.
Maybe.
My favorite part of this, though, is he shoots him with... it's a disruptor beam.
Yes.
And it vaporizes the entire ship.
Right.
Except them. I'm like, that's convenient.
Yes. And it also makes you wonder, like, well, if they had that, why launch missiles?
Yeah, exactly.
just shoot the thing with the disruptor beam. You just wasted 2 missiles.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that.
But the escape pod was a very nifty gadget. Yeah, this is the last page.
It's done it to me again. I was ready for the next page.
So this is a real cliffhanger ending. And when I was researching Count Nefaria, one interesting piece of trivia is that the New Jersey Palisades, those cliffs, were actually the shooting location for a series of silent movie serials around 1910 called The Perils of Pauline. That series of serials coined the phrase cliffhanger ending.
No way.
Yeah, because it was shot around those cliffs, and I guess the characters would be hanging off the cliff at the end of the, one episode of the serial. And so that kind of went into the English language lexicon.
Yeah, it's funny where these words come from.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's done it to me right now. I thought there was more to go. I was ready to read the rest, but that's only because I read the next issue. So,
right. It was a very strange place to end it. I thought that overall, the pacing of this issue felt a bit weird just because, like, the main plot is not even revealed until we're halfway, like it's a 19-page story. We're on page 10 before the main plot is revealed. So I kind of thought like, especially in comparison to the giant size special, like that felt like a real complete like saga of a story, with a beginning, middle, and end, and it raised the stakes. And this one clearly it almost feels just like a transitional kind of issue from the beginning is just wrapping up the loose ends from the previous issue. And then the rest of the story is setting up what I'm assuming is going to be the meat of the story in the next issue. And this is, it just really feels like a halfway point, which I thought it just felt a bit strange. And especially the low page count, because compared to modern superhero comics, like the standard page count these days is 22 pages of story. And this was only 19 pages of story, which I thought was curious. Yeah.
I didn't even take notice of what the next one is, page-wise, though.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see what that is compared to this one. I keep wanting to say stuff about the next one because it's so interesting.
We have to
I
wait.
think that's all I've got. I love that it's got a little ejector jet, but it gets destroyed so
Yeah,
easily.
that was such a nifty gadget. I liked that too. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. It's got a
Press
little
the
escape
giant.
pod where it saves them all.
I just love the eject button. It's this giant red button.
Right.
He
So
presses.
you
It
can't
looks like
miss
he's
it.
pressing it with his whole hand. It's like, yeah, Jack.
Right.
Um.
Well, it's made for the made for mutants who maybe don't have like
Oh, of
a
course.
hand, you know, so they can all eject
Yeah.
the pod if they need to, I guess.
Hit it with anything. Bash it with your head. It'll still make
Right.
it work.
Exactly.
I think that's all I've got. The cover was done by. Is it Gil? Gil
Yeah,
Kane?
Gil Kane, another Gil
Gil Kane.
Kane cover. Great cover, I have to say. Like,
Yeah.
just such a really eye-catching design with the big face of Count Nefaria. Yeah, really cool. And this is one that I have definite memory of seeing this cover
Yes.
from when I was a kid. So this design has really stuck with me for years and years. So yeah, definitely a great piece of artwork there. And yeah, I don't have anything else further to say on this issue. It was short and sweet, and obviously, like this episode of our show is going to be shorter since we've got less material to
Yeah.
discuss.
And say all I've got is this cover. I love that it's a story accurate cover.
Right.
I don't know if that's a normal thing back in the 70s to do that, but I know in the 90s that I grew up in, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
The covers
Yeah.
never did what was happening in the story. It did
No,
whatever
and they
sold.
still don't. Like, I recently just picked up a Batman issue last week, and the cover had nothing to do with the story inside. Like, I was like, what the hell? Like, it doesn't.
Yeah. So
This has
that was
nothing to
refreshing.
do with the story
Yeah, yeah.
inside. It was
Which is
crazy.
most of them now.
Yeah.
But because they're just about selling.
Yeah. Well, it's also that they'll get artists to just create covers, so they have like a stockpile, like a bank of covers that they can just use if an artist drops out, or if the scheduled cover artist can't do it. They've got all these other sort of more generic cover designs just on hand, ready to go, that they can just slot in there.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So I think it's just part of the business model of modern comics, I think. But yeah, I far prefer these type of covers where it's, as you said, story specific. And I love covers with word balloons on the cover. I love that. And you don't see that very much these days either. For the same reason, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because that wouldn't make sense here. The word bubble had nothing to do with the story.
Yeah.
They'd be like, why is he saying that? Or she
Yeah.
saying that? I don't know how I feel about word bubbles on the cover.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, they don't bother me, but I can't say that I like them either. As in that it's something that I look for or whatever. It's just I think it's neutral. I'm very neutral to them. That's probably the best word.
I think it gives me a real kind of jolt of nostalgia, because you don't see those kind of, you don't see that cover treatment on many modern comics. And when I do see it, it's like, oh, it's just like they used to do in like the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. So yeah, I love that sort of stuff.
Then again, some of my favorite comics have got that on the cover. I can think of one already, the Outback X-Men, which I'm looking forward to getting to.
Oh, yeah.
But that could be a while. But I just realized this was 21 issues where it was bi-monthly. So that's 2 years.
Wow.
To get through that normally. So that's 4 years to do it bi-monthly.
Wow. That's crazy.
So 4 years before it got popular enough to go, yeah, we'll do this monthly.
Wow, that that's kind of mind-blowing to me.
It is, isn't
That's
it?
interesting.
Yeah.
That's a long time in comics, just in the comics business, like 4 years. Wow. That's sort of that's blown my mind, sis.
well, it's bordering on the 80s that it finally goes
Yeah.
monthly.
So that
that's
would
pretty
be around 1978, 1979.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is, isn't it?
Wow. Interesting. Huh.
Well, I'm going to do my little bit. Like
Do it.
the video if you enjoyed it. Like it even if you didn't enjoy it. Share it with your friends. Either way, because they'll love it. They'll love it. And subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. Help us grow. Help us do more of this content. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Thanks everybody for watching.
Yep. So see you next week.
All right, Siz. I will talk to you then, my friend.
Yep. See you next week, my friend.
See ya.